$200 billion. That's more than the entire GDP of Ukraine, more than every dollar Disney has ever earned, more than what most countries will produce in a year. And the man who built it, he started with nothing. No degree, no inheritance, no connections, just a 16-year-old boy from a tiny village in Gujarat selling fried snacks to pilgrims on the street. His name was Dhirubhai Ambani. And this is the story of how India's richest man built a $200 billion empire called Reliance from absolutely nothing. Dhirubhai was born in 1932 in Chorwad, a small coastal village where the streets were dusty and the future felt predetermined. His father was a school teacher who earned barely enough to feed 5 children. There was no savings account, no family business to inherit, no safety net. If you were born poor in 1930s India, the world expected you to stay poor. But Dhirubhai wasn't listening to the world. He was listening to the traders. Every morning, he'd sit cross-legged in the village market, watching merchants haggle over spices and cotton. While other kids played, Dhirubhai studied margins. He noticed that the man who bought cheapest and sold fastest always won. So, at the age of 10, he started his own hustle, buying peanuts in bulk from farmers, roasting them at home, and selling them at a markup near the local temple. A 10-year-old running his first supply chain. That's not ambition, that's instinct. But here's what nobody tells you about Dhirubhai's early years. By 16, he dropped out of school entirely. Not because he was failing, because he was impatient. He couldn't sit in a classroom when the real education was happening on the docks, so he made a decision that would have horrified any Indian parent. He left India altogether. In 1949, a teenage Dhirubhai boarded a steamship to Aden, Yemen, a port city buzzing with global trade. He didn't speak Arabic. He didn't know anyone. He had no plan beyond showing up. He found work as a gas station attendant for a trading company called A. Bessie and Company, earning just a few hundred rupees a month. And this is where it gets interesting. While other clerks counted the minutes until their shift ended, Dhirubhai counted something else: shipping containers. He memorized which goods came from where, what each container held, the price difference between buying in Aden and selling in Bombay. He was building a mental database of global trade while pumping petrol. One day, he noticed something that would change everything. Aden was awash in cheap polyester yarn from Japan. India, meanwhile, was starving for textiles, importing them at absurd markups. The gap between the buying price in Yemen and the selling price in India was enormous. Think of it like finding a gold mine in your backyard that nobody else has noticed. So Dhirubhai made his move. In 1958, he returned to India with 500 rupees in his pocket and a single idea: trade polyester. He rented a one-room office in a cramped lane of Mumbai's Bhuleshwar market. So small that 2 people couldn't stand in it at the same time. He named his company Reliance Commercial Corporation. The word Reliance wasn't a brand. It was a promise that the people who dealt with him could rely on his word. But the first 2 years were brutal. Bank after bank refused him loans. They saw a young man with no degree, no collateral, and no family name. In 1960s India, banks didn't lend to dreams. They lent to dynasties. For Dhirubhai, every closed door was a slap in the face. So he did something radical, something that no Indian businessman had done before. He bypassed the banks entirely. Instead of begging institutions for capital, Dhirubhai went straight to the people. He walked into village markets, sat with small shopkeepers, and made them a simple offer: invest your savings with me, and I'll double your money in 5 years. No paperwork, no collateral, just a handshake. Think of it like crowdfunding. 50 years before Kickstarter existed.
And it worked. Hundreds of small investors trusted this young man from Gujarat with their life savings. That trust became his capital. And that capital became the engine of Reliance. But here's where the story takes its sharpest turn. By the mid-1960s, Dhirubhai wasn't just trading textiles anymore. He made a decision that everyone around him called insane. Instead of importing polyester from Japan and reselling it, he wanted to manufacture it himself in India. Building a textile factory from scratch in a country where the government controlled every industriance like a gatekeep was nearly impossible. The Indian government at the time ran something called the License Raj, a system where you needed government permission to produce anything. It was like needing a hall pass to breathe. Thousands of businessmen waited years for a single license. Dhirubhai didn't wait. He didn't give up. He outworked every single competitor. He submitted proposal. He personally met bureaucrats, ministers, and policymakers. He didn't just ask for a license. He presented a vision. "Give me this license," he said, "and I will make India self-sufficient in polyester. We will stop importing. We will start exporting." And against all odds, he got it. In 1966, opened its first textile mill in Naroda, Gujarat. The factory didn't just per revolution. For the first time, ordinary Indians could buy quality polyester at imported markups. Dhirubhai had turned an entire industry upside down. Now, here's the part that changes everything. Most businessmen would have stopped there. They had the mill, they had the market, they could have lived comfortably for generations. But Dhirubhai saw something bigger. He realized that every link in the supply chain he didn't own was a link someone else could use to choke him. If the Japanese raised polyester yarn prices, his entire business would collapse. So he decided to own every single link, from the oil well to the shopping bag. This is what business schools call vertical integration. But here's a simpler way to think about it. Imagine you sell lemonade. You buy lemons from a farmer, sugar from a supplier, and cups from a factory. If any one of them raises prices, your profit vanishes. Now imagine you own the lemon farm, the sugar plantation, and the cup factory. Nobody can squeeze you. That's what Dhirubhai did, except with petrochemicals. Throughout the 1970s and 80s, Reliance expanded like a banyan tree, its roots digging into petrochemicals, refining, plastics, and fiber intermediates. Each new factory fed the next. Polymer became fiber. Fiber became fabric. Fabric reached every Indian household, making everything cheaper and faster than anyone else. But Dhirubhai's most genius move wasn't a factory, it was an IPO. In 1977, Reliance Industries went public on the Bombay Stock Exchange, and that had never been done in Indian business history. He didn't sell shares to banks and institutions. He sold them to ordinary people, farmers, teachers, shopkeepers, auto rickshaw drivers. He ran newspaper ads. He held shareholder meetings in stadiums, where thousands of investors came to hear him speak. At one famous annual general meeting, 58,000 shareholders showed up. That's more people than most cricket matches. Dhirubhai turned Reliance shareholders into a movement. Investing in Reliance wasn't just a financial decision. It was an act of faith in India itself, and the returns were staggering. Someone who invested 10,000 rupees in 1977 would be sitting on over 16 crore rupees today. It's a return of 160,000%. Let that sink in. A school teacher who believed in a boy from Korwad could have retired richer than a CEO. But Dhirubhai's rise was not without enemies. The established business dynasties of India, the families who had controlled industry for decades, saw him as a threat. They had the government's ear, and they wanted Reliance crushed. In the 1980s, a coordinated attack hit Reliance. Rival business groups secretly had Reliance shares on the stock market, selling borrowed shares to crash the price and destroy investor confidence. It was financial warfare. The stock plummeted. Panic spread. Small investors who had trusted Dhirubhai with their savings watched their wealth evaporate overnight. So, what would you do? He organized a group of loyal brokers and investors, bought back every single share the bears had dumped, and forced a short squeeze so powerful that the Bombay Stock Exchange had to shut down for 3 days. 3 days, the stock exchange closed because one man from a village refused to lose. Reliance's share price was higher than before the attack. The boy who sold peanuts had beaten the old guard, and by the 1990s, Reliance was no longer just a textile company. It was India's largest private sector company. It operated the largest oil refinery in Jamnagar, Gujarat, a facility so massive that it could process over 1 million barrels of crude oil every single day. That's more oil than most countries consume. But Dhirubhai's vision extended even beyond oil. In the late 1990s, while the rest of India was still getting used to landline phones, Dhirubhai was already imagining a future where every Indian, from a farmer in Bihar to a student in Kerala, would carry the internet in their pocket.
He secured early telecom licenses, laying the groundwork for what his son Mukesh Ambani would later turn into Jio, a telecom revolution that gave 600 million Indians access to affordable internet virtually overnight. The man saw decades ahead. While everyone else was playing checkers, Dhirubhai was playing chess in 3 dimensions. On July 6, 2002, Dhirubhai Ambani suffered a massive stroke. He was 70 years old.
He never recovered. When he died, India didn't just lose a businessman. It lost a belief system. Hundreds of thousands of people Mumbai for his funeral procession. Shopkeepers, shareholders, factory workers, people whose lives he had changed without ever meeting them. His son Mukesh took the helm. Today, Reliance Industries is worth over $200 billion. It employs more than 350,000 people. That's more than the entire population of Iceland. From petroleum to telecom to retail to renewable energy, Reliance touches the life of nearly every Indian every single day. So what can we actually learn from 3 principles? Simple, powerful, timeless. First, own the entire chain. Don't depend on suppliers who can hold you hostage. Whether you're running a billion-dollar company or a chai stall, control as many steps of your process as you can. Every link you own is a link nobody can use against you. Second, trust the people, not the institutions. When the bank said no, Dhirubhai went to the people. When the stock market attacked, the people stood with him. Your first investors aren't venture capitalists. They're the people who believe in your word. Third, Think in decades, not quarters. Dhirubhai built telecom infrastructure in the 90s that his son wouldn't monetize until 2016. He planted trees he'd never sit under. The greatest wealth isn't built by chasing trends. It's built by seeing the future before it arrives. A boy who roasted peanuts outside a temple. A teenager who pumped petrol in Yemen. A man who was denied by every bank in the country.
That same man built an empire worth more than the GDP of 150 nations, put the stock market in the hands of farmers and teachers, and gave 600 million people the internet. Dhirubhai Ambani didn't just build Reliance. He proved that in India, in any country, your starting line does not determine your finish line. If this story changed how you see wealth creation, subscribe to Peak Capital.
Because next week, we have a story about the most dangerous financial trap that's silently draining your savings. And you probably don't even know it's happening.